Mr. Lee, please.
Thank you. All right, so the mic is working. Good. Wow, all of you are sitting really far back. So come on, move up front so you can actually hear me. Can you hear me all right? Because there's a lot of echo. Hello? Good afternoon. Okay, good. No more echoes. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to spend the next, I guess, 40 minutes or so talk to you about data-driven enterprise. So who listened to my keynote this morning? All of you, half of you, kind of there. So I do have some material that's a little bit similar to what I shared with the bigger crowd this morning. But then for this presentation, I'm actually really going to focus on what a lot of companies are doing in terms of transforming themselves into a data-driven enterprise, and what are some of the capabilities that EMC and Pivotal is offering in these areas. Some of them are product-centric, some of them are services-centric, some of them are just basically sharing of information. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on a little bit. Now, those of you that have seen this slide this morning, so I'll just go very quickly on this. The whole notion about putting this slide up is when we talk to a lot of customers and they're thinking, all right, so what does data really mean to me? How do I manage my data? What do I do with my data? I almost always tell them, look, don't think about the data itself. Think about what your customers are trying to do. Think about what you are trying to do for your customer. Go from that perspective and then try to figure out which data will actually make sense, which data will be relevant, and then try to figure out what to do with it, right? A lot of folks ask me, oh, I'm very interested in this big data thing. What is your big data platform? Come in and tell me about it. And then when I show up and I don't bring any PowerPoint presentations on the product, they're like, well, how come you're not talking to me about the technology? And I tell them, well, why am I talking to you about the technology if you're not telling me what you're trying to do? A platform is just a platform. Because if you think about what the customers are doing, increasingly more now, it is really more around personalizing the experience, right? Understanding what they're trying to do. And increasingly more because of what we are doing as consumers, right? A lot of the services are being personalized for us. We really need to understand what the end customer is trying to do before we try to think about what being a data-driven enterprise really is. And I like to use this slide because we live in a data world, right? So we all know that. The interesting thing about this data world is all of these big circles that you see here, right? Government, medical, and phone, and retail, and so on. We all knew that they had lots and lots of data. Every single industry have lots and lots of data. That's nothing new. I think the newer part, or the newer part, is the fact that all of these are really interconnected, right? They are all interconnected. So think about it this way. So say I get a cold, right? I go see a doctor. Doctor creates a medical, generates a medical statement, tells me to go and get some, tell me to do some research, I need to exercise more, and blah, blah, blah. So I might go into the internet, I might do some research, and then I might go to the drugstore to go buy some, go buy some vitamins. And then I might pay for that using my credit cards. It goes into the financial company. So I bank with HSBC here in Hong Kong. And then I might be calling some medical consultants for advice. And then that information obviously has to be tracked by the government. So they have all of the records. And then it might go back into the medical professional. So the reality is all of these data, they might be stored separately. They might be managed separately within the industries. But the reality is all of them are concentrated. All of them are really interconnected, right? So the companies that really understand how to capture these information, especially data that they don't actually own themselves, but they're able to leverage that information, becomes very, very unique in terms of creating some competitive advantage around what they're trying to do. So that's all background information, right? So let's take a look at what companies are saying as inhibitors in terms of driving towards a data-driven enterprise, right? Data-driven enterprise. So let's start on the left-hand side. So technology, data, and people. So technology. How many of you have line of businesses that basically have completely different database technologies that were acquired from different companies or acquired from different times, serving different purposes? And now you need to integrate the data. So you pull the data out from one repository to another, and then you put it into another data warehouse. How many of you have done that? Yeah, there's only one hand, but I'm sure there's a lot more, right, in the audience that have done that. That's not that's just the reality, right? Especially the larger the organization, the more of this is going to happen. But when you have various different places that are storing these information, yes, there might be a financial application, there might be an HR application that are serving very specific purposes. But if you're trying to get a better understanding in regards to how you do planning, how do you do budgetary planning, how do you understand how you create new prospects around your sales leads, all of a sudden you start to realize you do need the data. But moving data from one place to another is not an easy process, right? Especially if you're now combining structured information, which is a lot of transactional data, and then a lot of information that the customers are feeding back to you, maybe through the call centers and whatnot. A lot of them are unstructured information. How do you bring that together, especially if you've got various different vendors and different technologies that you're working with? So that obviously is an issue, right? That is an issue. And then the other thing is we think about the growing data, right? So we talk about transactional information that predominantly sits inside of the structured data area. Dennis Yip this morning talked a lot about the unstructured data. So he gave the example about the police department in China, collecting video surveillance information. But actually, in reality, there's actually a lot of data that are stuck in this area, right? What the industry calls dark data. And I think it's just a funny name, but dark data really means that usually they don't see the light of day, right? So a lot of these are logs. These are information, streaming information that you're collecting, regardless of where they're coming from. So some of these might be web logs. Some of these might be clickstream analysis. Some of these might be your mobile device. If you have a mobile app that you've released to the customer, there's a lot of information that's coming from the mobile app. There's a lot of information that are coming from your data center as well, right? Every single piece of equipment is generating something. Now, typically, there are network-based applications that are looking at the logs, and you've got server-based applications looking at the logs, and so on and so forth. Again, they're all siloed. So more and more companies, when they're thinking about doing big data, it isn't just concentrating in this area, because EDW technology have been around for a long time to take care of that. They've been thinking about doing this, but more importantly, finding information out of this. Now, the problem is both of these don't fit very nicely in the database environment, right? I think we know that. You can store a blob in the database, but it's not very easy to find information. And then it's even harder when you're searching for information, right? Searching for information inside of them. And that's only talking about enterprise data. What about external pieces of information that are just out there, right? The example that I gave you before. So there's a lot of information around public records. We work with a lot of financial services industries, companies that are now looking at publicly available information like unemployment reports, income reports, things that are generally available. Right now they're using those type of information to determine when they're creating new products, when they're targeting a particular segment, using those type of information to identify whether that is the right segment to target or not. These information typically are not generated within the firm. These information usually is available outside. There's also obviously the notion of Internet of Things. What do you think Internet of Things are? Anyone want to give me just a quick answer? Your phone, your sensors. Did you know anyone has a Samsung Galaxy S4, S5? Yes? If you do, put up your hand, please. Come on, it's right after lunch. You got to move around a bit. Yeah? Okay. Did you know that there are 18 sensors in the Galaxy S5? 18 sensors. I don't even know how to count them. So I guess there's the balancer thing, and then there's the fingerprint scanner. There's probably some sort of eye. There are 18 sensors inside of it, right? So every single one of you, if you have one device, you're already carrying 18 sensors. If you've got 2 of them, you have 36 of them on your body, right? And that's not including whatever other medical device that you've got around you. I was talking to a company that can tell you their name, but you know who they are. They own racehorses. Okay, so they have racehorses. So I was talking to them about big data, and they're saying, Sean, in his mind, the Internet of Things for them are horses, because on the horses there are a lot of things that are monitoring every leg, every joint, every movement of the body, because they need to understand how to streamline that horse when they're running down the racetrack. So when you think about Internet of Things, a lot of these may not be things. They might be live things as well. But these are not things that typically you would control within your enterprise. So the whole go around doing big data or doing data-driven type of analytic processes, do not restrict yourself into these areas, right? These companies are now looking outside. But then, how do you know which data set to bring together? That's not an easy thing to figure out, right? My very first job, I worked for IBM. I was in the DB2 lab in Toronto, Canada. And we were trained, right? Everything needs to be cleansed. You got to go through an ETL process, right? You've gone through that, right? ETL process. You bring it into a warehouse and you put it in rows and columns based upon a particular schema that you design ahead of time. But a lot of times, data information these days don't fit very nicely in that area. So if you're talking about these type of data that you all need to do some sort of correlation, if you don't have the skill set to do so, then, well, technology doesn't solve the problem by itself, right? People need to understand how to do that as well. So these are very big prohibitors or inhibitors in terms of companies moving towards a data-driven enterprise. So essentially what we're trying to talk about is, okay, so you understand there's data, but data by itself doesn't do anything because your customer don't touch the data by themselves. They touch the data through some sort of application that you develop for them, right? You develop for them. What that means is the application that you develop or your system integrator develop for you has to be big data enabled as well, right? So if the application only knows how to read things within a rows and columns environment, well, then you're still not really using whatever data that you're collecting and whatever algorithms and models that you're trying to create along with it. So applications and data really go very, very closely with each other, right? When we talk about a data-driven enterprise, it isn't just how to manage the data. It is about how to create the applications that are generating the data and then creating the insight and feeding it back in the application. It has to be a round circle, right? It has to be a round circle. Now, so we talked about the journey to the data-driven enterprise. A lot of people ask me, so what's the difference between business intelligence and data science? A lot of people are like, oh, data science, it's such a cool name. And I think I think the Wall Street Journal a little while ago published an article that says now the sexiest job in the world from an IT perspective is to be a data scientist. And there's a severe shortage around the skill set in this area. Well, the big difference between the two is that when you're doing BI, most of the time you're doing some sort of reporting, which are very, very important, right? So you're doing your weekly, your monthly, your quarterly. Some of them are regulatory centric, some of them are towards your executive board. Very, very important to do reporting. But typically, what are reporting generating for you, right? Reporting is mostly looking at information that has happened, right? So you're looking at a transaction that has happened. So show me how many transactions happen within these time within these type of revenue number, something like that. You're looking into the past, trying to figure out what happened, right? How can I improve upon it and things like that. But data science really is more focusing around predictive analytics. They're asking questions like, well, what if I do it this way? What if I shift some of my resources over on this side, and am I going to get a different result? Now, you might not actually be executing upon it, but you want to at least run some simulation against all of that data that you have. You want to at least run some simulation so you can potentially ask these type of questions, right? So the idea around these two, both of them are very important. It is not one or the other. A lot of people ask me, oh, does that mean I don't need to do BI anymore? Or does that mean, well, isn't this just BI? Well, they're not separate things. They're all touching the same data. But the reality is they're looking at slightly different things. One is looking historical data, very important. And the other one is looking a little bit more in the future, asking the right questions. So a little bit of stats or information to share with you. So this is a research that this big data adoption, right? And essentially what they're looking at is a lot of companies says, okay, I want to look at big data problem, right? I want to adopt big data technology because I've heard a lot of vendors talk about it. It seems very interesting. And they said, well, which area should we focus on, right? So just like this morning at the keynote, this research company did a bunch of surveys, and they found out that the majority of them want to focus on customer experience, exactly the same as what we found out from the Hong Kong IT executives as well, process efficiencies, new product, and blah, 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 and so on, right? Now, here's an interesting thing. If I were to group them together, right? So if I were to look at customer experience and targeted marketing, these are predominantly looking at customer behavior. If I look at process efficiencies, well, I can also group these together as well. They're mostly looking at process optimization. And then the green area, I'm predominantly looking at managing risk, looking at compliance-centric things. So you can actually do a lot of categorization in terms of what's my priority. Is my priority really focusing on the customer, or is my priority generating more revenue? Or are they really correlated anyway, so I have to do both at the same time? There's one interesting one over here, which is the missing one, right? This is this missing one. Monetize information directly. That's what a lot of the analysts are categorizing as enabling innovation. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, isn't creating new products innovation? Well, it is, right? But what they're primarily looking at here is innovation usually is something that is very different than the traditional way of how you've done it, right? So if you're creating a new product, and that new product is a newer release of the same thing, right? It's just a better version of the old one. It's not really an innovation. That's just a new product. Innovation is usually taking something that you were not using before, or you may not using it very efficiently, but now you're generating something new, especially from a revenue perspective. So you could see that a lot of people now, a lot of companies, and I don't mean just the telcos, I don't mean the service providers. I see a lot of traditional enterprises monetizing their data. They're monetizing their data internally, but more importantly, they're turning themselves into a data service provider and then using that data to advance their revenue opportunities as well. I'll explain that a little bit more later on. So why do it now, right? So again, this is some of the quotes that we've gathered from the market. So Gartner says, you know, competition, blah, blah, blah. So of course, analysts are always going to say that. But look, take a look at this one. This is Warner Brothers, or Warner Music Group. They're obviously an entertainment company. And they pretty much have turned themselves into a software company. Well, why? Because the way how people consume entertainment, video and audio and music, is really through a lot of applications and devices that are driven by software now, right? We know that because we all have smartphones. We all know what streaming means to us now. So even companies like these that are fairly traditional, right? A record company, are now looking at building the type of things that they're offering to their customers very differently. This is a bank, right? This is a very large bank in Europe. And what they're saying here is, look, their biggest competitor right now is actually not a member bank. What they're looking at is a lot of their competitors are really e-commerce companies or purely online banking institutions. They don't have the legacy of actually having the branches. And quite frankly, how many times have you gone to a branch over the last 2-3 years, right? Probably not a lot, but you probably use a mobile device a lot, or at least go online. So brick and mortar banks are also looking at really a way to compete with these newer vendors because predominantly they are creating things on the World Wide Web and on the mobile devices now. So when we look at the type of things that folks are looking at, the current situation, they want to start a big data projects. They don't know where to start. They might have some skills deficiency. They might not know how to do it, right? Managing databases, I think you can find a lot of people in the market who knows how to do that. But it's not easy finding people who knows how to write in Hadoop, right? And that's what a lot of folks are using Hadoop now from a data analytic perspective. So how do you enable your organization to get to that point, right? What kind of things do you need to do? So instead of starting on the technology side, we started the people side, right? You almost need training. You need training in your own internal organization or maybe perhaps an SI that you're working with. And then also you need someone to help you find the optimal use case, right? You can't look at all the use cases at once. So we focus a lot on prioritization, right? Helping you prioritize exactly what some of those capabilities needs to be. And then we also look at some of the application development process, the data deployment process, and we think about what are some of the methodologies that can now be adopted because of newer technologies that are available that can allow you to do things much faster. So we talked a little bit about that this morning as well. And then obviously we get down to the technology. We look at the data. So we got data silos. How do I bring it together? Should I just dump everything together in a Hadoop cluster, or does that not really solve a problem? I've got real-time information. Can I use my Hadoop distribution to do that as well? Or do I need some sort of in-memory data technology from another vendor? Right? Does that really mean that I've consolidated everything, or am I actually doing something that is more like a data lake? So let me go into the people part a little bit. So a lot of people ask us, okay, we like big data. We understand big data. We've heard a lot of vendors talk about it. We like what you have shown us so far, but we need help. We need to know where to start, right? It happens a lot. I'm sure some of you in the room has been thinking about it as well, right? My executive says, yes, I saw you. Your executive says, okay, you need to, big data seems very interesting. Let's do big data, but you're trying to think about what to do. So what we have is, we offer a big data curriculum. Now, this is not a purely technology curriculum, right? This is not purely a technology curriculum. This is 3 separate curriculums. We have a shorter one for the executives that really highlights what big data can potentially do for them in companies that are very similar in their industry. This is very much a business case building type of an approach. That's why you see it's not a very long workshop. We also have ones that are geared towards the business leaders. And by business leader, we mean the line of business leaders. So these are head of whatever departments that they're in. And they're thinking about, okay, so what do we do? So that's why you see a little bit more, right? So they actually have to think about the product life cycle. What are the type of people that needs to be involved and so on and so forth. The executives don't usually think that because they kind of delegate, right, that responsibility to the business leader. And then at the same time, we also have this last one over here that focuses on the data scientists. Now, we have data scientists in the region. We have quite a few of them. And we have used them and we've deployed them on various different projects with our customers. But our goal is not to be a consulting shop, right? We're not an Accenture. We're not a Deloitte. We don't want to be in that business, right? We're a very, very different business. They're a very good partner of ours. So what we do with our data scientists is their goal is more train the trainer, right? So they want to be able to work with our clients, work with their data analysts, and help them turn themselves into data scientists. And that's what this course is really about. So we would identify some customers, and they'll tell us, hey, we've got 4 or 5 people, 10 people that we think are very capable or at least have the right profile to be in these areas. Then can you help us train them to be data scientists? Right? So we haven't even talked about the technology. We are just talking about at least getting the right mentality and getting the right knowledge and getting the right skill set. We also have what we call the data lab. So if you actually want to engage with our data scientists to help you along, maybe to do the first, second projects, to not only do it for you, but also train the analysts along with you, this is the process that we go through. Right? Typically, it's anywhere from a 1 to 12-week engagement, depending on how big and how long your projects are. And what we do is we actually help you do the research. So you look at various different big data resources, and we identify what are some of the things that can enable a business process, whatever business problem you're trying to solve. And then we help you try to prioritize which opportunity to go through. Right? The worst thing that I hear when I go to a meeting is we want to do a big data project and we want to do everything all at once. Not too many people do that now, but I still hear some clients do that. And the reality is you can't boil the ocean. You have to prioritize. You have to show value in doing it in the new way, document it so that you can repeat the process so that these projects have a higher chance of success. Right? You don't want to do it all at once. You want to gradually build upon that. So we have done this a lot. So essentially, we will help the customer do a couple projects. We'll train their data analysts and their internal employee. But what we'll also help them do is help them set up a data science innovation center. And the idea here is they wanted to be able to have the skill set, have the platform. It's almost like an internal consulting group, if you may, right? Internal service provider that the line of business can now come to you and say, hey, this is the problem I need to do. This is the new product I need to do. Can you help me simulate what the market reception is going to be? They go to them, right? So we do a lot of this type of projects for customers, including this one right here. So this is Reliance in Industry. This is in India. They're a very large corporation that covers retail and energy and telecom as well. So they have a lot of people within their organization. Very, very different focus. You can see retail and energy are very, very different. But almost all of them have the exact same issue, which is what do we do with our data? How do we make it better? Can we actually associate different things together? So basically what they've done with us is to help them set up a center of excellence, very similar to what I shared with you in the previous slide. Then we take a look at the process, right? So understanding the business case, envision what the workshop is, And then also, remember I talked about data and application really needs to live together, right? Because your customers don't touch the data. They generate data for you, but when you go back to them, you're exposing it through some sort of application, maybe mobile, maybe online. So we actually have an organization within Pivotal called Pivotal Labs. And what is Pivotal Labs? Pivotal Labs focused on an agile development methodology, right? And our claim to fame is these are all customers of ours, right? You might not think those are typical customers that would go to a third party like ours to develop applications, but those are all customers of ours. And the reason is we have a team of folks, and when I say a team, that's a few hundred of these developers that are all very young. They know the latest and greatest development methodology. You want to create something that lives on the cloud, that leverages internal and external data sets. You want to understand how to actually create the algorithms and build it right into the applications. We've got folks that knows how to do that, right? And that's why these are the type of customers that we have. In fact, I talked about the Mercedes example this morning already, right? So during the keynote, I already talked about how we build this application for them. But this app isn't just controlling what's happening in the car. It is also actually interacting with the user. So the user the driver, right, gets into the car. They go to Google Map and say, I'm going from this place to that place. So they're using it as their GPS device, no problem. But the app actually says, if you're going there, well, you probably need to park somewhere. So they will actually go and look at some online database and try to find where some of the, the parking spots may be and actually redirect them. So think about your mapping application. You might put in your originating point and you put in your destination point, but in this case, the destination point may not be exactly the same as what you put in because the parking lot that is close to where you're driving may not have the exact same address, right? So everything is actually built into the application by itself. But there are also other apps and data platforms that we built using our Pivotal Lab capability to do so. So Facebook, the iOS app, they built it themselves. But when they were going onto the other platform, the Windows and BlackBerry platform, we built it for them, right? So we understand what they're trying to collect. We understand how they're trying to build it. We poured it over onto various different things for them. Enterprises, this is Visa. This is not for consumer. This is more for their SMB business. So they have a mobile application that can actually track how much payments are coming through, where are they coming from. Are they coming from the POS system, or are they coming from the online system, or are they coming from some sort of mobile payment platform? So all of those are being tracked, and this is also built by our team as well. But again, the goal is the exact same thing, very similar to our data science practice. Our goal is not to be continuing to build this for you all the time. Our goal is to be able to build the first 2, 3 applications, teach you along the way, so you can actually do it yourself. Your developers can do it yourself. That is the goal, right? That's why we call this part of our process in terms of the pivotal methodology. The last piece over here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the technology, right? So we are in a technology conference, so we have to talk about the technology. This is a typical analytic environment, right? Most analytic environment probably looks even more complex than this. So there's a lot more lines coming in, a lot more lines coming out, a lot of lines going in between, and so on and so forth. What we are, and EMC are working together on is creating what we call a data lake environment. And our data lake is a little bit different, right? Our data lake says, okay, the first thing that we do is not to structure the data. We want to keep as much raw data as we can. We want to bring it into our environment so that when you need to analyze it, that's when you can do the transformation. That's when you can then service it towards an application, and then you can act upon it, right? It's a very simple process, but it is a store and then analyze approach, not a transform and then store and analyze. That's a very, very big difference. Think about doing things within the database. Yes, you have to fit it into a table, but when you're going into this type of an architecture, no longer are you doing that. You might have service manuals. You might have PDF files. You might have Excel spreadsheets. Most customers that I work with usually take their Excel spreadsheet and try to convert it into a table, right? And then they dump it inside. A lot of our customers are not doing that anymore, right? They're keeping the Excel table exactly as it is because the query engine knows how to read it. The query engine also knows how to read structured tables as well. Oh, and by the way, they can also do text-based searching against unstructured information. And I think that's the power of some of these newer technology that are coming to market, because you now have the capability to do that. I'm going to just build this out a little bit. I know there's a lot of boxes. So we already know about the 3 Vs or 4 Vs, and I think some analysts are coming up with the 5V model now. But anyways, all the Vs, right? So what we're doing here is EMC provides a lot of storage capability, but the storage capability isn't just used to store that data. They also have capability to help you stream that data into the storage array as well. So think about it this way. A lot of times when we do our data projects, we want to start from scratch, right? So you build your database instance, and then you start to fill data inside of it. But what if you already have a storage array, whatever type it is, it's already got data inside of it. Remember, we're talking about unstructured data and logs as well. So you have a storage environment, you already have a lot of data inside of it. Do you have to then stream it into a database or a data lake environment? Well, no, because EMC has capability that can actually turn that existing storage environment, use the data that's sitting inside of it, but expose that storage environment through HDFS. And once it has been exposed as HDFS, then our analytic capability can sit right on top. So what that means is you are not moving data from one place to another place to another place to another place, especially if you already have the data sitting inside of the storage array. If you have it sitting already, wrap it around with HDFS. Now we can get access to it. You can do analytics immediately. And that's the whole point about the integration that we've done with EMC, is the notion of making things easier. Data's already there. Make use of it where it is instead of moving it around, which is essentially the same problem as what a lot of folks have been looking at previously. So this is an integration that we've done at EMC Isilon. And you probably heard some of it this morning already. Isilon is a scale-out architecture. It's extremely scalable. But the interesting part about Isilon and where the integration happened with Pivotal is that Isilon can be exposed as NFS. It can be exposed as CIF. It can also be exposed as HDFS. So what that really means is you might have some files that you are literally copying and pasting into this storage array. You can map this as your F drive. You can copy and paste a bunch of data and throw it inside. But as soon as you throw it inside, the analytic capability that sits right on top of it through Pivotal can analyze that data immediately. What that means is you're not ingesting anything. You are just basically copying and pasting like what you do in Windows, Control-C, Control-V. You copy it in there, data is readily available for you. Well, our team actually has a demo, a data lake demo that they've created over the last couple of weeks to simulate, the F1 is running now or soon in a couple of weeks in Singapore. So they've collected some data from there, and they're literally just using data very easily. Whatever data is available, they download it, copy it, dump it into a volume, boom, right off the bat, they can run analytics on their portal. Very, very simple. This is not your traditional environment where you're building a lot of stuff, doing a lot of data integration, and then hoping that the query will actually return something in real time. This is not that kind of an environment. I talked about this example earlier in the keynote, just for those of you who didn't hear it earlier. This is a telecommunication company in Singapore. They have fixed line, they have broadband, they have mobile, they have set-top box, so on-demand TV. And essentially what they're noticing is a lot of their cable subscribers going down, right? And we probably see that in Hong Kong as well. This is happening all over the world now. So cable TV subscriptions is coming down. Most people are consuming video and consuming content online. So when you're consuming online, you are controlling when you want to watch it, what you want to watch. So that they want to mimic that experience, right? So one revenue comes down, the other revenue is coming up. They want to maximize that, right? So what they're thinking about here is these type of companies, a lot of them, content providers, they make money through advertising. So in the cable world, right, everybody looks at the same commercial. So 8 o'clock is the prime time. So that's the most expensive time slot. That's how they've been doing business for a very long time. But your 8 o'clock and my 8 o'clock is probably very different now, right? 8 o'clock in Hong Kong is probably just people getting off work. 8 o'clock in France, sorry, I shouldn't pick on any country. 8 o'clock somewhere else, it's probably already after dinner, right? So lifestyles are very different. And even in the same location, lifestyles are very different. Depends on what you're trying to do. Yes, I get it. So what that means is what they're trying to do is really personalize it for that customer's experience. They know people are watching things on demand anyways. So they've collected data from all 4 of their business units. Their mobile data, their fixed line data, broadband data. They try to understand what the customers are doing. They also try to monitor the Facebook pages that they've set up. Right? Customers are going on there and say, hey, I want to watch more of these type of shows or whatever it is. Or I'm trying to stream something, but the signal is not very good, so they're complaining. They're capturing all of that information, social information, transactional information, viewer habits. They bring all of that into a data lake environment. They do cross-analysis, and now they have some capabilities to build that analytic capability directly within their set-top box, right? So now they could say, when I log on to that set-top box, kind of like the Xiaomi box, right, from China. When they log in, they know exactly who it is. They know what type of commercial to push to them. And then they can also tell the advertiser, hey, I think you have the higher probability of actually hitting something because I'm actually finding the right customer segment for you. That is data monetization. That is turning data that they've always had, but they were not using, and now they're monetizing that information. Right? Does that make sense? Right? This is a very interesting use case, and this is happening right in Asia. So just to wrap up, we talked about people, process, and technology, and you notice technology is all the way down here. Because quite frankly, if you ask me, so your technology, your pivotal technology compared to open source, compared to IBM, compared to other vendors, are they very, very different? Well, they're different, but are they very, very different? Not really, right? Everybody is doing more or less the same thing, especially when more and more of these technologies are open source based. So when you are evaluating vendors and when you're thinking about how some of these technology can really help you turn into a data-driven enterprise, right? Whether you like the term or not, right? Data-driven enterprise. Then you really have to think about the other processes, right? Do these vendors help you get to that point? Or do they just want to live with you for the next 24 months and build everything for you? Or is their goal to help you? And this is our goal. Our goal is to help you get along, right? 3 months project, and then we teach you how to do it, and you move on. Right? That is our goal. Our goal is you want to leverage the technology, but you should be able to do it yourself because, no matter how we try to play that game, there's no way we're going to know the telco business as well as a telco provider. And there's no way we will understand the airline industry as well as a Cathay Pacific, right? There's no way we will understand that. So our goal is really to help you, work with you, so that you can get to that point. So that's the end of my presentation. I don't know if we have any Q&A time, but thank you very much for everyone's valuable time. And I see a lot of people have moved up, so I'm very happy about that. Thank you very much.